right, welcome everybody to a very, very, very special edition of the Central Mafia live stream. If you're wondering, it's like, hey, it's Tuesday, it's not Thursday. That's why it's special, and you're gonna see why here in a few minutes. So, as always, just a couple of housekeeping items just to keep everybody informed. If you are new to the Central Mafia, I'm going to learn a little bit about where we are, and you're probably wondering what are we doing here on a Tuesday. So typically, it's me and my other half, Mr. Sean Lardo. But you know what makes it special? Because we have new hosts joining the crew. So with me today, I have Keith Nelson and Aaron Waters. If you guys can, there's Dr. Lardo. Keith, Aaron, how's it going, buddy?
Hey, what's up? What's going on?
Keith. So this is very special because we are not only having a live stream on a Tuesday, but we're also announcing or officially announcing that the Central Mafia is going to be over in the California area. We've been working together for the past good couple of weeks, months, getting this together. So, Keith, Aaron, I'll let you guys do a little bit of intro and just share your energy on what we have planned for California. What's the goal?
Well, I'll let you start it off, Aaron.
Yeah. So I'm Aaron Waters, and I was a facilitator for the ConnectWise user groups since 2016, 18, something like that.
Way back.
Back when there was groups all over the country, and we'd go in San Francisco one quarter and then Anaheim the other quarter. So
it was AKA the Aftershock. So for those
Aftershock, yeah,
all those are out there listening and hear the Aftershock, this is the we're gonna bring that same energy, that same vibe.
And we had Carl Brickmore, who he led it for a long time. He's the GOAT. Really loved what he helped. He's one who brought me in. So I've been kind of staying in touch, and then now seeing how things have been going with Central Mafia and kind of what's going on there. It's great. So I want to get involved and help bring it back to California, back to Southern California.
Yeah. Same thing with you, Keith. I remember you just reaching out like, hey, we need to have user groups.
Well, it is pretty exciting. I actually started years ago, back when Andrew Morgan was my installer and Arnie sold us ConnectWise years ago. And then I returned to help my son's career at ConnectWise. And I have ties to Chicago. I grew up in Niles and I have family there. So jumping back between Chicago and California will be a great time.
Yep. So we will. So we'll bring all that energy. We'll keep that togetherness. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Central Mafia name and are watching the broadcast, what we are is basically an MSP community. We're built for MSPs by MSPs. All of our partners, all of our advisory counselors, they're MSPs, and what we want to do is make sure that we have a community where we can come together, we can make connections. This is one of the greatest things about this community. We make connections, and we're able to reach out to each other to help each other grow. It's an open community, so make sure that you make suggestions. If you want to see anything in here, just let us know. We have a lot of people that want to help us grow, and I'm sure we can bring it to the community. And make sure that you're engaged. You get engaged through all of our different channels, and those can be either through our Slack. If you want to know what's going on, just going to LinkedIn. Just follow us on LinkedIn. That's where the best way to get all the different updates. And this live stream is also being broadcasted into LinkedIn and YouTube, and that's our repository. So if you hear something here that you want to share with anybody else, just go into a YouTube channel, and you'll be able to find this and all the other recordings. So make sure you stay up to date. We do have a newsletter that goes out every month. In there, we have all the partner updates, community updates, vendor updates, and all of our upcoming events. So we're making something very special up to the user group. So you're going to have a lot of live streams, bringing you a lot of information for the people that are going to be part of those meetups. So we will have another live stream next Thursday. And then that's on the 19th, and then on the 26th we'll have another one, and then on March 10th we'll have another one. So got a little bit changing our coming episodes, just to keep everybody up to date, and also what's going to be the content, what you're going to see in these meetups. So we cannot make this possible without the support of our sponsors. So for our 2026 sponsors, thank you so much for everything you do for us, for your support and for believing in our community and what we're building. So Cronus, which we'll talk to today with James, also Infima, Pivotal Crew, Exemplify for providing us all the platform to communicate with all of you, and Movila for also supporting all for our efforts. All right, so speaking of meetups, we have our first meetup for 2026 happening in Chicago. Same place, over at Brew Ridge. Same agenda, pretty close. Pre-day, we're going to play some cornhole. We're going to do some networking. We're going to have some fun. And the next day, which is going to have an all day of networking, we're going to have our sessions, and we will be able to collaborate in there with all the other MSP partners and all of our vendor sponsors. So there's a QR code. I don't know I hate when there's like QR codes on my computer screen because I don't take my phone out. But if you want, you can do that. But I made it really easy. If you go to chicago.centralmafiaug.com, it'll take you to the registration form so you can register. So very easy. Chicago.centralmafiaug for user group.com. And
does our pre-day include cigars? I mean, that's important.
It does.
Okay, good.
It includes whatever you guys want.
Oh, now I'm going to go.
Yeah.
So, and then Keith and Aaron, you guys are in California. We're having one over there. So
That's right.
Yeah, it's a really cool hotel, the Marriott Suites in Anaheim near Disneyland, right along all the good stuff down there. A lot of nice restaurants, and we'll have a pre-day networking on April 15th, and then the main meetups on Thursday, April 16th. So make sure you do your taxes so you can make it to our pre-day. Those are usually the best.
Yep, absolutely. And made it easy. California.centralmafiaug.com. And you'll receive all the information. There's also room blocks for both of them. So if you are, if it's a far drive for you from home, you can go there on the 15th, enjoy, hang out with the pre-day, and then be there safely then the next day. So it's all been arranged, and it's a free event for all MSPs. So with that, like I said, we have 2 new hosts. So I did my housekeeping. So now I'm going to hand it off to Keith and Aaron to introduce our speaker. And it's James. So I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to let you guys rock it.
Finally. Okay. All right, Keith.
I'd like to introduce James. He's the coolest guy in the world.
I gotta just have a shout out to Juan. He's been really chugging away with this coming out of COVID, and it's great to see what it's become and the engagement. And so we're excited to bring it to California. So I really do appreciate Juan continuously to put things together, and Sean too. I know he's watching from somewhere, probably not working. And so yeah, just I'm glad to be involved again for sure.
Yeah, I'm super excited too.
Yeah, Sean's in preschool right now, but I'm sure they let him get on Zoom to watch us during his nap time. I think we're really lucky to have our first guest be the coolest guy in the channel, the cyber beard himself. just a smart guy and a real giving guy. You'll learn a lot from him, and he's also a DJ, which I just mentioned because my special needs son's a DJ and they hold that in common. But James is a great guy with Acronis. He's always got a lot of good information, never big a lot of sales, usually just helping us become better MSPs.
Yeah, I am also a DJ. That's wow. I mean, it just a lot of DJs on this call.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, it'd be good to have him out there. I've not gotten to meet James yet, but he does seem pretty cool. So I got nothing else to say. So if we want to bring him on and get going, let's do that.
Hey guys.
There he is, the main man.
Hey.
So yeah, it's 2025, the year of the DJ, or 2026, the year of the DJ, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not as good of a DJ as Ryan, though. I'll tell you that. And I've got a lot to live up to as the coolest guy in the channel. We got Sean's dad here, right? And
that's
that's a tall order.
Mm-hmm. That's a big title.
It is. So, guys, thanks for having me here. I do work for Acronis, and Keith, I appreciate it. I take pride in not pitching, right? It's something that I don't really want to do. Ultimately, what I want to do is make sure that people understand what they have at their fingertips, and that's something that these types of community meetups really lend to, right?
Yeah, I think it's important. We really can develop our business by learning from people that have succeeded before us. Absolutely. And it's better to learn from someone else's mistakes than make it ourselves.
100%. And that's what I've found to be the most rewarding thing about being part of these communities is, being able to learn from one another, whether it be our failures or our successes, right? Because, even large business owners, right, they can still learn from one another on their successes, on their stacks, on their EBITDA and things like that. It's something that, we can take and scale multiple ways, right? It comes down to making sure that, the new guys know what they're talking about, right? And that the more tenured folks are continuing to learn, right?
Exactly. You're the younger guys like me.
Yeah. I in my last MSP, I went to a user group in like 2013 or 14. I think my ConnectWise account manager, back when they used to call you, he called me up and said, "Hey, you should go to this." And it literally transformed our business, because one thing led to another, and going from community to community, hearing about stuff, then going to IT Nation later. And so, yeah, I that's why I hold a special place in my heart for communities like this and user groups, is because it turned us from trunk slamming computer guys into a real actual business and MSP.
Yeah, from reactive to proactive.
Yeah, just because you just don't know what you don't know, and so just having all these other experiences in the room is really rich. So that's why the pre-day is so nice too. I'm glad we're doing that, because it's time to sit and network and kind of chop it up.
Absolutely. Again, pre-days are any time where you can sit down who have similar goals, right, but have different processes to accomplish those goals. You're coming out 100% ahead, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So, you learn a lot on how other people have really taken advantage of the tool sets we have. I often find in talking to people, you go to shows or events and someone goes, "I'm looking for a new tool," and you go, "Why?" And they go, "I want to do this." And you go, "Your tool does that." And you'll find that out a lot. And that's why it's so great to have vendors along with us, and not all tools are as intuitive as we'd like. And at times it takes, someone that's kind of has some background in there to show us how to leverage what we're already paying for, and maybe even expand it into offering a greater level of Disney Nordstrom type service to our customers.
And I've learned that with a lot of PSA onboardings, and making sure that people can get the full value, extract the full value out of the solution that they're leveraging. And sometimes you're right, Keith, sometimes that solution has already been deployed within their business, and they just don't realize it. or they just haven't been trained on it. That's a big one too. Making sure that you understand exactly how you can be utilizing the solution that you already have deployed. And that's a big conversation we have with Acronis all the time, right? We're no longer part of the break fix days, right? We're now part of that proactive, and finding threats before they can get through, and then also providing you the, not only the left of boom, but also the right of boom, right? Being able to make sure that as we discover that we have the ability, the means to clean recovery, the meantime. And the tools nowadays have to play nice together, right? I mean, I've really built a lot of my tenure with Acronis in integrations. Right? Again, it was RMM and PSA integrations, making sure that the financial team understands how they can leverage the PSA integration, make sure that all of the trouble tickets are going to the right place, make sure that all the technicians' times are, they're being tracked, right? Making sure that all the remediation details are being entered and logged. But ultimately, for the finance people, at the end of the month, they're not doing hours and hours and hours of reconciliation. And then you've got the RMM where you have the technician who just wants to go and get the job done, right? Hopefully they're of the right caliber, the right technician level to get the job done. They don't have to pass it on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's so important to coordinate that with customer experience. Because at the end of the day, we really don't wear the cape, our customers do. And they're really interested in business outcomes, not as much as the magic we do behind the curtain. So the ability to automate that and streamline it and make it really function well gives us more time to serve what our customers want, which is using technology to increase their business outcomes. And that's where the big payday comes.
It is, and I've got a recent story that I'd like to share with you all. One of my buddies runs an MSP, gives me a call. It's like 3 a.m. his time, so California time, midnight. I'm still up, but the fact that he's calling, an actual physical call, not a text, not an email, phone call, means it's terrible, right? So he calls and he says that he's in the war room. I'm like, what do you mean the war room? He says, let me tell you what happened. I guess they decided to push a patch. It should have been routine, right? They found a vulnerability that a vendor flagged. He scheduled it for after hours, like a responsible technician should. Simple 40 machine deployment should take 20 minutes. Within 45 minutes, all 40 machines have blue screened, and he's got 4 different vendors pointing fingers at one another, right? This is important because I know you've all lived this. And this is the reason why we have user groups, so that we could talk about failures like this. Right? But as the vendor side, right, I'm not there to point fingers. I'm there to help you figure it out. But in this scenario, right, you got vendor 1, right, patch management. The deployment was clean, not their problem, right? The EDR guys, they detected suspicious behavior. They quarantined it. They did their job. The firewall guys, right, when they saw the quarantine, they isolated it, right? They kicked in working as designed. SIM guys, they logged everything, right? They sent over 4,000 alerts. Not sure what else they could do, right? So 4 hours of finger pointing, not one taking ownership, just finger pointing. So this is where it really gets worse. His company was going through being acquired at this time, and they were going through the due diligence process. And what was a $4 million deal on the table is now being scrutinized. The buyer's tech team was on site, and they saw whiteboards covered in network diagrams. They saw the team looking like zombies. They asked what happened. They have to explain that their tools are fighting one another. So the next morning, he gets an email from the buyer's COO. And he says, given the operational vulnerabilities that were exposed during our visit, we're going to reduce this by 18%, and we've got to extend our due diligence by 60 days. So let's do that math, right? $4 million offer, reduced by 18%. It's about $720,000 gone. Not because of a breach, not because of bad security, but because his best of breed security stack, or Franken-stack, made his company look slow and operationally incompetent. So he didn't just lose 4 hours, for this. He lost $720,000 in company valuation, right? And that's what keeps me up at night, right? Thinking that the best of breed means best of protection when it doesn't. It used to, but now it's actually building this N+1 problem. And every tool is just It's not just another capability, it's another login. It's another update to schedule. It's another conflict point. It's another vendor to coordinate with, another finger that could be pointed. So again, my buddy had 4 enterprise grade best of breed tools, all award winners. They spent 4 hours in a circular firing squad while his company's just dead in the water trying to fix it. And that's really what I wanted to talk about, right? How this siloed stack really isn't solving many problems. Now, a few years ago, obviously, I wouldn't tell you put all your eggs in one basket. I'm still not telling you to put all your eggs in one basket. What I'm telling you is that fragmented tools are slowing your team down. That's what I'm saying, right? And until fundamentally, right, it's because we've all been working under a flawed mental model, right? We build security stacks. We think, in addition, right, EDR is good. Add a firewall, even better. Add email security, right, even better. Then we think our security posture is kind of equal of the sum of all the tools that we're utilizing. But again, more tools should equal more security. But that's not how it works, guys, right? And we all know that. And the real formula here is that your security posture is really, it equals your tool's capabilities minus integration overhead, minus conflict probability, minus coordination tax during incidents. And that integration overhead, it really doesn't scale linearly, right? It scales exponentially. It gets larger and larger and larger. So one tool, right, 0 integration points. 2 tools, maybe 1 integration point. 3 tools, we've got 3 integration points. 4 tools, 6, 7, 5. It gets bigger and bigger, right? So when we get to so many tools like my buddy had, right, you get to a bit of fatigue, right? And that's I think really what we want to talk about today. So Keith, Aaron, you guys run businesses, right? You've sat with your technicians. You've been a technician yourself, I'm sure, right? Can you share a story where you had a trouble ticket that should have taken 5 minutes but took much longer because you had to escalate it?
I can tell you, well, first of all, 720,000. While James has that in his pocket, for most of us, it's a lot of money, and I think that's something we overlook in this business. And you bring it up when you bring up tools, and so often people are looking at, oh, this tool's a little cheaper, and if I spread it around, I save a little money. And you go, the biggest cost, as your friend pointed out, is labor and company value. And these tool costs become incidental in that equation. And so does our cost. And I always like to tell my customers, I have to charge you enough to do the job right. And I think we have to focus on that. And what happened to your friend is really regrettable, but that, we, even for simple things like at the ports, we're moving a phone system over and we're doing a dry run with just 2 phones out of 25. And people go, that costs them a lot of money. I go, having no longshoreman dispatch for 2 shifts, that costs them a lot of money. Not dry running and planning and these little things. That's not the cost. So, that's a great thing to look at, is we have to really look at the impact cost, the cost on the business, the cost on loss of income. The fact that employees, staff then loses confidence in their automated systems because they're unreliable and works around them. That costs. So there's a lot of costs in what you're talking about, and really having your hands around the stack you deliver to help your customer really leverage their technology for their benefit.
Yeah, again, if they're not playing nice together, then you're wasting time, right? Again, look at what happened. His EDR was watching for suspicious behavior, right? It's trained to quarantine anything that looks like malware. That's its job. It's doing what it's supposed to do. In patch management, right? We're going to push out updates, legitimate behavior, but to the EDR could look suspicious. Code modification, registry change, right? Network calls, all IOCs, right? Indicators of compromise. So when the EDR quarantines the patch mid-installation, right, the firewall then sees it and says, oh, if EDR just quarantines something, there's got to be a threat. We better isolate this system. At that point, we're wasting time, right? This is now scaling, again, exponentially into a much larger disruption than it should have been originally, right? And meanwhile, the SIM's logging everything: quarantine event, isolation event, failed deployment, right? It's configured to alert on everything because nobody wants to miss a breach.
Right.
And again, it floods the team with so many alerts, right? Say 4,000 in like 90 minutes. None of these tools are broken. They're all working as designed. They're doing their job. They're working in isolation though. They're siloed. And that's the issue, right? They're optimizing for their own rules, for their own definitions of threat, for their own response protocols. They're not coordinating between multiple vendors. They're not talking to each other. They're competing. They're not cooperating, right? Or cooperation. That's something that I love about this industry is that, even though we offer a lot of overlap with other people, we still find ways to cooperate with one another, right? So this makes the infrastructure the battleground, right? And now you're thinking, well, that's a configuration problem and we just need better integrations. Well, yeah, technically, theoretically, sure. But let's talk what that means in real practice, right? To properly integrate multiple tools, you need APIs, you need orchestration layers, you need custom connectors, you need someone who understands all the tools deeply enough to configure them to work together, to automate that, right? And my buddy is a smart guy. He had integrations set up. EDR was sending alerts to SIM. Firewall was pulling threat intel from the vulnerability scanner. The patch management queried asset inventory. But what he didn't have was bi-directional, real-time communication across all the tools, and a unified policy enforcement and conflict resolution. Because, well, that doesn't exist. Not in any product you can buy today. Every vendor optimizes for their own tool, not your stack, right? And that's something that provides you with the Franken-stack, right? Technically integrated, but functionally siloed. They can send data to each other. They can coordinate behaviors. They can't negotiate, and they can't resolve conflicts. So when something breaks, when you hit that edge case where tool A and tool B are incompatible and they're assuming, you end up in that war room where you've got all the vendors pointing at each other like the Spider-Man meme, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's because of the N+1 problem, the integration space between them that nobody owns. And again, not bad tools, not bad configuration. It's just that architectural pattern of best of breed for everything creates an integration burden that eventually exceeds anybody's ability to manage it. And it shows up exactly when you can least afford it, right? During incidents, during audits, during due diligence, and just it costs much more than what we would ever put onto paper, right? Because we're not thinking about it that way. So let's get concrete about what it really costs, right? Because most teams dramatically underestimate it. It's every security tool, requires deployment, requires updates, requires access management, license management, alert tuning, integration maintenance, vendor management, training, troubleshooting, onboarding. So for one tool to onboard a new tool, maybe 10 hours a month, that's manageable, right? That's great, that's fine. But when you add a second tool, you don't just add 10 hours, you also add integration time, right? We have to make sure that they're talking to each other, the troubleshooting, resolving conflicts, add another 5 hours there, right? 2 tools, 25 hours a month, 3 tools, 40 hours a month, 4 tools, 60 hours a month, right? And this is, again, exponential, it just grows. So by the time that you create your Franken-stack, you're burning 150 hours monthly just on tool maintenance. And that's almost one full-time employee doing nothing but feeding your security stack. And I guess, when something breaks, like in this instance, the patch conflict, it explodes, and we have too much time spent with vendors instead of implementing the fix, right? So whether it be 4 hours on, vendor emails back and forth, 6 hours of implementation, trying to get the fix right, 8 hours on root cause analysis, and then 10 hours of hardening, right? We're looking at 28 hours for one incident, not counting opportunity cost. And that's the real cost of it all, right? So the integration tax, it's not just time, it's speed, and security speeds everything. So again, 2 p.m. rolls around, your EDR alerts on suspicious PowerShell execution. It points out possible credential harvesting. In a single platform world, right? We pull up a console, we'd see a full attack chain, we'd isolate that system, dump the memory, we'd check any lateral movement, and we'd remediate. Total time, 15 minutes. So again, whether it be siloed, whether it be together, the call is yours, right? The world's yours, so you get to choose. But in this patch issue, right, the EDR console showed the alert, only sees the endpoint behavior, for network context, then switch to the firewall console, different login, different UI, different query, right? Check the firewall, saw unusual connections, but can't see what data was exfiltrated because that's in the DLP, which is completely different console. Shows up in the DLP as a flag transmission, but can't correlate to the PowerShell process, without SIM. So again, another different console, another query. Check the SIM, got the logs from all the tools, but different formats, different timestamps, different field names. Looking at 10 plus minutes writing correlation queries. So now you finally got the big picture. 25 minutes later, you still haven't responded to the client, right, or to the ticket. We've isolated the system. Now, which tool, right? EDR can isolate at the endpoint. Firewall can do it at the network layer. We could do it at the switch level, all slightly different with different side effects. But now we have to make a call, right? So we'll isolate via the EDR. Now we've got network monitoring going dark because the firewall can't see the endpoints. And again, integration tax. Every context switch costs time. Every translation, every query, it costs time, and every tool decision costs cognitive load. So the mean time to respond goes up, right? And your efficiency goes down.
Yeah, the integrations, I don't know if you know my history. I was on the data gate cruise back in software technology days. And the big problem with integrations, and this really hasn't improved over time, is their error reporting's not great. So you put in an integration, it works until someone changes something, which they do all the time because they're always, and then all of a sudden you're not getting the error reporting, that you're not getting complete data sets over. Someone's extended a GUID and it's not filling in. And so you sit there with a false sense of security that you're getting full integration when you're not, until you need it. And so you probably have to add in time for someone to constantly check your integrations and monitor all of your vendors' releases to see how those releases may or may not have affected the data pull, the push and pull you're expecting.
Yeah. 100%. There was a study that found that teams with 10 plus tools spend 60% more time on tool management, or not more time, but 60% of their time, right, on tool management versus 40% on actual security work, right? And worse off is that the mean time to detection and the mean time to remediation or recovery, it increases exponentially with the tool count, right, as we've been discussing. Teams with 5 or fewer tools average 2 hours mean time to remediation, and teams with 15 plus average over 6 hours. So again, the more security tools that you have, the slower you are at responding to threats. And the thing that you bought to make you more secure is actually making you less secure by making you slower. And that's real damage. It happens every day. Delayed detections, missed correlations, slower responses. And again, every minute switching consoles is a minute an attacker can move laterally. Every hour in a vendor blame call or a vendor blame push, email, it's another hour that ransomware can encrypt files, right? And again, the integration tax, you can't write it off. You just have to pay it every day, in time, speed, and effectiveness.
And you bring up the real point. I hear a lot of people that go to conferences, which I don't do much of, and I don't do sales, but you go to these things and people talk about, my customer won't buy security because it's too expensive. And you go, wrong. Your customer won't buy security because his finance department thinks you're going to be too disruptive to the business flow. And it's not the whatever $15, $20 a month per endpoint you're going to charge them for security. It's the fact that you're going to stop sales from being productive, and that's what the real concern is. That your prudent behavior is going to be too disruptive to income producing behavior, and they say, I'll take the risk and take the income.
Yeah, I always notice when you talk to anyone who's been in operations and at a client or even another MSP, and there's this one-dimensional continuum with security and convenience on either side. And so that's always this battle of like, the most secure company can't get shit done. And the company that can work the easiest is a big target. And it's like, you can never be on either side. It's all about how can you strategically be in the best position. And that, that it's like, that's how you're like the front end, right, with the client. And then on the back end, it's like, so the client, yeah, you got to obviously sell that sort of that way that they can operate and be more secure. And there are times I've definitely dealt with that too, where it wasn't always about price. It was the cost of time or the cost of just, they've been around the block. It's inconvenient to have, they're like, I'll roll the dice on these particular things. And you don't want that to be your objection, and then you go back to your office and you realize, oh my God, it is kind of like an absolute chaotic mess for me to manage a daily, ticket flow. And to that point earlier about the stacking integrations and everything, that's something that I started my current MSP a couple of years ago, and that was one of the things that I don't always get the chance to kind of do it over again. And that was one of it was kind of not just one, it was I think my top priority was like building the stack as lean as possible. Like, how can I get to the best possible service delivery and product for the clients with the fewest amount of tools? And that's one of the reasons why I actually, I don't even know if James knows, but that's why I engaged Acronis, was because that was one of the, every tool I use is like as many in one as possible. And right now I only have 4. I only pay 4 checks. And there's still some integration, but that layer that in my last MSP, we had like 25 tools, from everything from like PAM and documentation, all the little dashboards. But when you added it up, it was like, and you say 60%. I think some days it was like 100%. Like some days we would all just
dedicated just to management. Yeah.
The whole team were just like fixing things, and and whoever the lowest level help desk person is just like putting fires out all day.
And I mean, this extends outside of security stacks too. I mean, we can look at your CRM, your PRM, all these different things that your company utilizes to do business, right? It's not just, one area that I'm pointing at, but, so in the sense of security, right? If a Franken-stack doesn't work, what does? And like you said there, Aaron, right? It's finding the tools that do play nice together, right? It's a consolidation method, right? It's a consolidation play, right? But what I want to talk more about is platform consolidation, right? And to be specific, because platform is very buzzwordy, right? We don't, obviously everybody has a platform and they leverage it. But what I mean here is a real platform has 3 characteristics, right? So one, unified data model, every capability, right? It's doing reads from the same data store, same schema, same timestamps, no stitching logs from 7 different locations. One source of truth, right? 2, right? Coordinated action. When the platform detects and responds, every capability knows and adjusts, so the EDR and the firewall don't fight because they're the same system. And then 3, a single pane of glass, right? Again, another buzzworthy word, but not a dashboard that's just aggregating multiple tools. One console where you see, investigate, and respond, where you protect, you manage, and you automate, right? All the capabilities without context switching. So those 3 things, I believe, solve that N+1 problem by eliminating most of the integration points. So again, think about your stack in tiers, right? You've got tier 1, you've got your core platform, right? Your primary detection response. Tier 2, your specialized capabilities, things like things that your core platform doesn't do, maybe OT security, maybe specialized threat intelligence, maybe web scanning, maybe DLP. And then tier 3, right? Governance and compliance, tools that sit above and orchestrate. So your SOARs, your GRC, your vulnerability management dashboards. They don't directly detect threats, but they coordinate tier 1 and 2. So this model, 3 to 5 vendors total, right? 1 tier 1, 2 or 3 tier 2, 1 tier 3, it's manageable. Your team can know the tools deeply and you can coordinate during incidents, right? But when you're looking at much more than 4, right? That's where, everything was tier 1. And then all these solutions are doing core security while none of them are coordinating amongst each other. So the objection is, platforms are more expensive, but are they? Right? Multiple tools at say $100,000 each, right? $400,000, right? Integration work, 150 hours a month at, say 150 an hour, right? $270,000 a year there. Right? And then your incident response tax. So say that you run into 10 incidents, 10 extra hours each, that's 15,000, right? Training on multiple vendors, it could be 10,000, 40,000. But again, these are things that need to be accounted for. And then your vendor management, right? Senior hours at 200 hours, $200 an hour, right? It all stacks up. So again, multiple tools, it becomes an exponential problem. And that's what we're trying to really approach and conquer with our platform, right? By going through and providing XDR, EDR, MDR all in one, on top of the backup, on top of the email backup, the email security, the security awareness training. It's making sure that technicians are capable of doing their job, and that it's not something that needs to be passed off to the next technical tier, so that now what should have been a 5-minute recovery or a 5-minute response is now 45 minutes, right? Again, it's just making sure that we have everything in place to empower that technician. Guys, let's talk about technician, the endpoint to technician ratio, right? So Keith, when you're looking at your business, right, how many endpoints does a technician handle?
I've really never calculated that. I calculate on every one of our technicians equals 1.5 million of recurring revenue. I do it on recurring revenue, not endpoints. But to the point you're making is all this amplifies because it doesn't scale down well. I heard a saying something, and I was shocked that the average MSP is 5 employees and about $1 million in income, which I think is overstaffed, but that's a different story. And you're going, but if that's the average, all this vendor management, integration management tool, it's worse than what you described because it doesn't scale down. You're leveraging away from your income producing technicians. So I think it's a double cost, negative cost. It's a cost against operation and a cost against productivity and customer value.
Absolutely. So I mean, actually, Aaron, let's ask you. What do you see?
Well, yeah, I think we'd always kind of run at about 150 per, which is very, very it's also overstaffed, but there is more and more, there was a lot of overlap between projects, account management, project management. So there's, because sometimes some service activity would fall under that. So as things get more organized, better. But that's kind of what I'd see. But that was us, very white glove. I've seen some who would do 2,000-3,000 endpoints with like a team of 5, which I think is phenomenal. But they had a very intentional, like you have to, like, that doesn't happen by accident, right? You intentionally just streamline everything about being able to add clients and build a way to onboard and manage them, and do account management without having to just like throw bodies at it.
Yeah, that's where automation is key, right? Again, having deep understanding of the solutions that you use and being able to automate the ones that are mundane and recurring, right? And that's where these logs really are helpful, is seeing, where these recurring tickets are happening and correlating those and making sure that, all right, well, if this happens, if this, then that, right? And this is exactly what automation solves for our industry, not just our industry, but any industry. So, and what's the real problem here, right? It's not bad tools, right? It's, again, bad configuration. It's not lack of integration. It's that N+1 problem. Making sure that the tools that you have are speaking to one another and that the technician is capable of doing more with less, instead of spending time switching consoles and managing the systems themselves, right?
I think you have something, maybe I think different than other people. I'm an anti-stress guy. You know me, James.
Absolutely, sir.
I think life is about enjoying life and most of I think our stress is self-created. I think of your friend back in the day that everything was blowing up on him, and not to put him down because I'm sure he's a smart guy like you, but as that stress comes in, your ability to think goes down.
Absolutely, it does.
And so now all of a sudden you're flipping between various screens and that don't even function the same. And I think you're prone to making mistakes or missing something because you're trying to move too quickly. You're increasing your stress, and you're probably not offering the level of service and response to your clients you are because you're overstressed.
Yeah.
You can't figure out what you're doing on the back end, and their answer is, "Are we up yet? Are we up yet? Are we up yet?" And so I think that single pane of glass has something that goes further than just monetary savings. Yeah. It has mental health savings and quality of life savings. And maybe someday you'll live to be as old as me at 185 because you don't have stress.
Game's off the gray over here. So I mean that there's something to be said about that, Keith, right? I've read multiple articles about Tibetan monks, right, with their breathing and their meditative state, being able to comprehend traumatic issues much easier, being able to navigate them. And this is something to be said for anybody, right? If you've got stress, you should try meditating, right? You really should. I know it sounds like a scam. It sounds hippy dippy, but you should really give it a go. There's there's also a study where, not a study, but when people are trapped, say in an earthquake, they're under a bunch of rubble, what they do to cause, not cause, but what they do to help kind of lighten the situation is they have them sing, right? Because when you're singing, it's a hard time to sing, but they have them sing because it's really difficult to think about all the stress when you're trying to regulate, breathing and singing and things like that. Now, obviously, it's hard to go and start singing, zippity doo-dah when you're running into a tremendous attack, but taking a few moments to control your really kind of control your regulatory system, right? Because you're in a dysregular state. If you can control that, you're going to react so much faster and so much more efficiently, right? And again, it's about.
I'll give you one anecdote on that. We don't go off on it because it'll be a whole different thing. During a time I was managing through a terrorist attack in San Bernardino, the FBI agent later, after we did a recap, commented. He said, we were monitoring you. We had you on. We were taking your blood pressure the whole time. He goes, as we were going through this in the 14 hours you managed it, your blood pressure never went over 140. He said, we were expecting 200s is what we normally expect, especially as you're at your age. And it has to do with really just taking the time to, relax and keep things in perspective and keep your head clear and probably make better decisions because you do that. So there's a lot of truth to that breathing, meditating, focusing on what you can fix and not what you can't fix.
Which kind of leads to the idea of, maybe we don't need to optimize for capabilities, but start optimizing for coordination so that we can have that peace of mind, understanding that the orchestration will handle it in the way that we need it to. Because obviously modern attacks, they're fast, they're multi-staged. It goes from access to encryption very quickly, right? And being able to respond with coordinated actions, that's, again, something that most Franken-stacks don't do, right? If that EDR doesn't know what the firewall is doing. But again, it's knowing that we have gone through the process, we deeply understand, what type of remediation coordination needs to happen so that we can automate it. And again, be able to go sip pina coladas on the beach, while we have, a bot doing it in the background.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think what you bring up is so really important, especially to the target of people that are in the mafia here that, are, smaller MSPs looking to leverage profit, leverage their vendors to make the most profit, to run a business that's comfortable for them and rewarding for them and their employees and provides the value to their client base. And that all has to do with like you said, a coordinated, well-paced effort. You look at those scenarios, you go, you surely don't want to suppress alerts because if you ever get audited for the claim, you're not pointing. So You do need all those alerts, but you need that common, where all those components know you're in the middle of doing some type of upgrade, so that the level of response is a little more controlled and tamed, and possibly allows you to say, we're upgrading one workstation now. Tell me what it triggers so we can plan this and move forward. And that has to do with having a set of tools you can easily manage and control and know in one place, and see how they talk to each other and connect. Yeah. And what each one will, it'd be interesting to trigger it and see how does that reflect in each component. What does each different component see to the same event, and why it may look similar or different.
Absolutely. So again, it's more so just about evaluating, what that unseen cost is, and I think really to unify protection, manage and automation, to make your mean time to a clean recovery, right, go down and your margins go up, you need to really evaluate it all, right? It's not just how much does this tool cost, how much does my technician cost, right? Obviously, looking at it as a evaluation of what is the MRR that they're bringing in is great, but again, I think at that point you may still be leaving some money on the table. So us having these kind of conversations is what gets people thinking, right? Let's open up for Q&A. See if anybody on the line has any questions.
Sure. I don't see where we'd see questions, but
Yeah, we don't do that. We don't.
Questions.
I can't see that. Can we?
yeah, no.
Yeah, I was monitoring over there in the background to make sure that there was no other comments. Typically, you will see on the banner. If there's a question.
Juan was watching us. This was, by the way, James. This was Aaron and I first show, so he was seeing if we're going to be kept up.
Yeah,
to see if he's going to sign us on or
two thumbs up. Thumbs up.
I have a question. Actually, I need to sell this once and for all. Is it Acronis or Acronis?
Acronis.
What I thought. Okay.
Acronis, not acorns, not acornis, not cornies. I used to work for a company called Aperture. It's funny enough. There's a story behind that one. We could talk about that offline. But yeah, so it's Acronis from what I know. My colleagues across the pond may call it something different, but that's how I pronounce it.
Like the whole Azure, one of those. Okay, that's just inquiring minds want to know.
You've got to roll the R in Acronis, So if we don't have any questions from the group, right? I had a challenge for everybody, right? As business owners, right? Next time that you have a chance, don't just look at your licensing, right? Sit down with your techs. Sit down behind one of your technicians for an hour, right? Count the swivel chair moments, right? Switching windows, relogging in credentials, right? Calculate the time lost switching between tools, and then multiply it by their hourly rate, right? That's going to help you choose a platform that makes cyber resilience a revenue driver, not a cost center. And that's ultimately what this is about, right? Making sure that you guys are increasing your margins.
That is, I've actually had techs go, I don't bother checking the other one because it's too hard to switch back and forth. So you go, how much data is actually getting lost? And I say, no, you check it all. That's what we get paid for. But, they complain about that. It's like, it's a real issue. Yeah,
no, it is. It is. I mean, again, I've been in that chair, right? I've been the support engineer. It's if you don't have to show your work, that's great. But again, how are you going to show the customer, what you're billing them for if we don't have it all logged, right? And again, that may feel like a time waste, a time suck to the technician, but ultimately it's a revenue driver, right? We need to be able to show the work that we've done so that we get billed properly.
Yeah, that's a great takeaway, because yes, we did. That's something that we talk about here internally, and I think at one point we did an audit. It's like, how many tools are techs using? I think it came out like 26 different tools, and you only talk about your stack, but you also talk about the level of expertise that everybody needs into that tool, right? So you get that level, somebody can get uncomfortable and it's like, oh, I'm just going to pass it to them, or like Keith, it's like, I'm just going to ignore it, right? Yeah. So a lot of risk in there. So that was a great takeaway. Thank you, James, for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad that you guys have branched out to California, and that we've got our representation out there as well. And again, just for the folks who joined us a little bit late, don't forget that we have that Chicago meetup happening in March, and we also have the Anaheim meetup in April. We'll surely, share the links with you guys again.
Hey, James, always great seeing you, my friend.
You as well, Keith. I'll see you soon, my man.
All right.
All right. And if anybody wants to get a hold of you,
you can find me on LinkedIn, Cyberbeard. It's pretty simple to find. I look just like I do in the picture. It's no old ones. But yeah, seriously, if there's any questions, whether it be about Acronis, about operational efficiency, anything at all, I've been in the MSP vendor side for 16 plus years, right? I've worked in the trenches alongside support engineers. Happy to have a conversation. I'm happy to learn as well. So, if you see me at a show, don't hesitate. Come on up.
Awesome. So if you want to have more conversations with James or any of our partners, just come over and join us at the meetups over in California on April 16th, or the upcoming one in Chicago, March 19th. Gonna be a good time.
See you all at both.
All right.
All right. Keith, Aaron, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's good.
For hosting, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody soon.
All right, great.
All right.